Things are not usually as they seem, and when you are in doubt, maybe it is just best to turn back and take a run for it. All this dog and its owner wanted was to have an alone time out in the woods, undisturbed by humans, and enjoy the sheer feeling of being a dog to a great dog owner. But they would quickly come across something that would have both the animal and dog run to safety.
While on vacation out in the woods, a man and his dog come across something so terrifying that when they finally get home, they have to put their own house up for sale. Here's the story in his own words. This all started with a trip to the woods. My dog Chance loves chasing sticks out of the river. So I rented a cabin up in the woods, far out of town, for just Chance and I. During one of our hikes, we came across what looked like an abandoned shack. Unable to help myself, I had to go inside. The roof on this place was warped, and the paint on the walls was flaking off like flakes of snow. I just loved abandoned places. They intrigued me, so I hung out for a while. After looking around for quite some time, Chance started acting very strange. Chance saw something that put him on alert. He started to back away from whatever he saw until his rear end bumped into a tree. His eyes still locked straight ahead. That's when I decided it was time to go. I called his name and snapped my fingers. He came to my side, eagerly ready to go. On our journey back to the cabin, Chance kept looking behind him. I couldn't figure out why. The next day was our last day at the cabin, so I took Chance to the river so I could throw some sticks for him to fetch. He was having the time of his life. It started getting late, but I figured I'd throw the stick for him one more time. I tossed it up over my head and waited for him to go get it. Chance took off as fast as he could, paddling out to the stick. But this time he didn't grab the stick. He turned around and looked at me with worried eyes. He just sat frozen in his place, not willing to go any further towards the stick. I thought, what the hell's wrong with my dog? He seemed to be focused on something just on the other side of the stick. And then I saw it. First I thought it was a man, but then I realized it was just the shadow of a man, extremely dark, in the middle of the day. He just sat there waiting in the water, staring at Chance. I called frantically to my little buddy to get him to come back to me, but he wouldn't, so I had to rush into the water, grab him, and drag him back. The whole time the shadow was watching us. After we got to shore, we looked back and he was gone. We decided to leave right then and there, and hoped that whatever that was would stay behind at the cabin. The first few days of us being home, nothing else happened. We figured the shadow figure did not follow us and stayed back in the water or in the cabin. We were relieved. But little did we know that that was just the first time we would run into him. A few nights later, I was in the living room working on a website when I heard Chance start barking again out of nowhere, which was followed by thumping, yelping, and a huge crash. I'm out of time. Go to part 2 for the rest of this amazing story.
The man would quickly realize that whatever they met with in the woods would follow them home, and it would take selling the house to be completely rid of it. And he would learn that sometimes some abandoned places are abandoned for a good reason.
I looked over my shoulder at the base of the stairs, and I saw my buddy Chance laying on the ground at the bottom of the stairs trying to collect himself from his fall. I said, "Are you okay, buddy?" as I walked over to him. I checked him over real good and he seemed shaken, but otherwise unharmed. But suddenly he started to growl. A growl like I've never heard him do before. He turned his head to look up to the top of the stairs and his body began to tremble. I turned to see what Chance was looking at, and at the top of the staircase was the Shadow Man. But this time his red eyes were focused on both of us. Chance and I sat there frozen, just watching, waiting for it to do something sinister. But it turned and disappeared into the wall. Even Chance looked at me like, what the hell was that? It was the next weekend and I was up late. I put myself to bed around 3 o'clock at night, only to be woken up again by something terrifying. My bed shook with great force like something was pouncing on it. Then Chance jumped up by me. He let out a whine and started shaking. I stroked his head and said, "It's gonna be okay, buddy." Then the sound of something dragging got both of our attention. We looked up and saw it was that terrifying Shadow Man again, with his red eyes piercing through the darkness. He lingered at us for a few moments, then his eyes dimmed and his body faded away. He was gone, but by this time I had had it with this thing. I just couldn't handle the constant terror anymore. The very next night, while in the shower, I hear a clattering noise coming from my kitchen. I quickly ran down to investigate. My buddy Chance was backed into a corner in the kitchen, and of course, standing about 2 feet from him was the Shadow. I was sick of him messing with my dog, so in a fit of rage, I charged at it. It turned and looked at me as I was charging him, his red eyes just glaring at me. Not knowing exactly what I was going to do, I reached out and tried to attack this thing. But just as I broke the plane of the shadow, he disappeared. The house went up for sale the very next day and sold very quickly. I didn't know if selling the house would rid me of this shadow figure, but it was a chance I was willing to take. So far, it's been 2 years and I have not seen him since. Maybe he stayed with the house, maybe he went back to the shack in the woods. But after all this, I learned one valuable lesson. Some abandoned places are abandoned for a reason.
Do you know that there is a website that deals solely with the last meals of death penalty inmates? This website shows details of their last meal.
Terrifying websites you should never visit. Part 1. The Last Meal Project. This website covers every single death row inmate's last meal. What exact food they wanted, what drinks they wanted, any kind of dessert or special favors they wanted, and of course photos leading up until their unaliving. If this video can reach 30,000 likes, I'll release a part 2.
This clip contains one of the very worst and unimaginable ways a person actually died.
Worst ways people have died. A woman working in a chocolate factory dropped her cell phone in a vat of molten chocolate. She began to search for the phone but ended up falling in. The machine then continued to mixing her until of course she was unalived. Like and follow for more.
One of the scariest close calls with death is seen in this video with these cyclists who thought the railroad was abandoned. The train misses them by seconds.
Scariest close calls with death. On May 18th, 2018, 2 cyclists enter a dark tunnel, assuming that this tunnel is an old abandoned railroad track. Everything's going fine until they come across their worst nightmare. This railroad track is live, and there's a train coming their way. They hear train sirens in the distance and quickly cycle for their lives. Luckily, the cyclists were able to escape the train, with seconds to spare. Like and follow for more.
Did you know that if humans were to kill humans at the same rate at which humans kill animals, it would take just under 20 days for humans to become extinct? Check out more disturbing facts about our world in this clip.
Yo, what's up? Here's some scary facts about our world that you probably didn't want to know, part 42. Back during the Antiquity era, Spartan warriors had a dish called black soup, and it was made of boiled pig legs and blood. Sounds appetizing, doesn't it? Back between the 15 and 1800s, women were forced to wear something called a scold's bridle. It was a mask that went around your head and had a metal piece that went on your tongue to keep you from gossiping or sharing words that didn't need to be said. Supposedly, the reason you wake up right before you die in a dream is because your brain doesn't know what comes after death. I know you guys probably know this fact, but it's still just very mind-boggling to me. But if humans were to kill other humans at the same rate that they kill animals, we would be extinct in 17 days. When the Siamese twin Daisy Hilton died, her sister Violet, still attached at the hip, wasn't found for days after she died, so she was just sitting there with her dead sister's body.
Would you believe that when people die, they are not buried with their blood? Apparently, the blood is drained with a tube and replaced with formaldehyde. Check out more disturbing facts about our world in this clip.
Yo, what's up? Here's some scary facts about our world that you probably didn't want to know, part 43. One of the reasons refrigerators are magnetic is because back during the early 1900s, children used to get stuck inside of these when they were playing hide and go seek, and they would actually suffocate and die. There's actually a condition known as arachnodactyly, and it makes your fingers and your toes appear abnormally long in comparison to your palm and to your foot. It can appear at birth or later on during life, so don't think you're safe just yet. There's a chance that you could experience internal bleeding, but you may not even know it's going on until it's too late. Oh yeah, I didn't know if you knew this or not, but actually when you die, they drain your body of all the blood. They put a tube through your jugular, it goes down a table, and then it empties out into like a sink or a toilet. Yeah, and then it's just replaced with formaldehyde.
How this serial killer is able to commit the murders he is linked to is eerily disturbing. But on the bright side, it is calming that it is all just fiction. But what if it wasn't?
Let's talk about one of the most disturbing serial killers in all of fiction, Stefano from The Evil Within 2. Stefano is a photographer and his art is his greatest obsession. This eventually led him to a career as a war photographer. One day he managed to capture a picture of a soldier at the exact moment they were blown apart by explosives. And ever since then he became obsessed with the idea of capturing death as art. During your playthrough of the game, you get to see some of these grotesque examples of his art. But how is he able to do these things? In the world of The Evil Within, Stefano is basically a god. Since reality basically takes place inside of an advanced simulation in that game, the more powerful your mind is, the more powerful you are. So what do you think happens when a serial killer gets inside?
Ever since this simulation theory was proposed in 2003, it has been hard to view the world with the same worldview. Check out what the philosopher said.
We are living in a simulation. The simulation theory was first proposed in 2003 by philosopher Nick Bostrom. Bostrom predicted that there is a good likelihood that humanity as a whole will advance to the point where we can mimic our ancestors in a simulation, just like we do now with computer games. Bostrom gives 3 alternative explanations and argues that at least one of them is almost certainly true. The first, we're living in a computer simulation. The second, advanced civilizations have no interest in simulating us. And finally, civilizations are destroyed before they reach capabilities of simulating consciousness. Bostrom proposed that we could be living in one of the thousands of simulated realities, at the mercy of whoever is out there running the simulations. The point of submitting 3 hypotheses is that Bostrom argues that one must be true. So what if?
This is the story of 2 people in the woods, one who notices all the bad things and the other who reassures her that nothing was seeming off. Who turns out to be right? Check it out here.
This is why the woods terrify me. Ruth and her boyfriend decided to go backpacking in the Pacific Northwest. Ruth didn't really want to go, which I don't blame her, but her boyfriend was like really insistent. So they finally get into the woods, they set up camp, and Ruth notices something is not right. First of all, there's dead deer everywhere. Maybe there was like a virus that took out a lot of the deer, but no, to Ruth, it looks like something killed the deer. Her boyfriend is like, no, that happens, let's keep going. But for Ruth, it just keeps getting worse and worse on this trip. Weird noises in the night, more dead deer, and then one day while she's out walking, she finds this cave. And she goes inside of it. And what she sees is such a crazy twist, but you'll have to watch Significant Other on Paramount Plus for that. And for 3 months, you can bundle Paramount Plus with Amazon Music Unlimited for less than $5. So you can also listen to Mr. Ballin, where his podcast lives exclusively. Head to the link in my bio for more information.
Ever thought of what your last words would be? This clip contains the last words of some serial killers.
These are the most disturbing last words from serial killers. John W. Rook would become one of the most feared people in America after he committed one of the worst crimes that anyone had heard of at the time. You see, John would assault and then take advantage of a nurse at a local hospital. John would then be sentenced to execution through the lethal injection on September 20th, 1986. And his final words were, "Freedom. Freedom at last. It's been a good one." When people discuss Peter Manuel, they often refer to him as one of the most disturbed minds in the history of the world. He would take advantage of and kill at least 7 people. Manuel would be sentenced to execution through hanging on July 11th, 1958. And his final words were, "Turn up the radio and I'll go quietly." One of the worst events in American history was the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. This bombing killed 168 people, and the culprit, Timothy McVeigh, would be sentenced to execution through lethal injection. And his last words were, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." I hope I never have to see you on one of these lists because...
What draws you to watching scary things like this? Let us know in the comments.